so we can make sure that we address and engage in all the interests of the audience here today. My research was sparked by my own experiences in higher education. And I just want to share with you one brief experience that I had that sparked this research. During my undergraduate years, I came into class one day on crutches. And a white male peer was genuine in asking me, "Hey, what happened to you?" But before I could answer, another white male peer said he was running from the police. In that moment, I had my first experience of double consciousness. The view in which I saw myself as an aspiring scholar, and the view and the lens in which I was viewed by my male counterpart. Double consciousness is that feeling of two-ness, of being American, Black, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings. Du Bois made this deposit into academia in 1903, and here we are in 2021 facing the same issues and the same dilemmas. The experience that I had is not unfamiliar to Black males in higher education, and it is the cause for low graduation rates. Black males are graduating at a rate nationally that is the lowest when compared to their male counterparts. And although women are outperforming men, the disparity or the gap between women and men is the largest gap among the Black race. So we understand that these are outcomes, but to really dive into the reasoning behind these outcomes, we must look at the experiences of Black males. So today we're going to have an overview of my research. For the academics in the room, we'll do a brief research approach. Then we'll cover the Black male experiences and have a call to action. In the first phase of this interview, we're going to situate the internal and external aspects that aided Black males or inhibited their desire to persist to degree attainment. In the second phase, it is going to be a call to action. In essence, what we're going to do today is we're going to call out, but with the intent to call in. And so I intend to have transparency and inclusion today and invite everyone to have a seat at the table. In higher education, in this academy, we recognize that this is a marketplace of ideas to cultivate success for Black male collegians. So again, think about all of your identities and what you bring to the table, all the years of experience, all your leadership. And we need all faculty members, staff, we need community members to really take on this issue. Higher education is a beautiful institution. It is not without its stains. What I do know of higher education in my studies is that the establishment of higher education predates the establishment of government and the Constitution. Now, we understand that higher education at that time was white, male, and strictly for the purposes of studying religion. However, we also know that higher education, specifically predominantly white institutions, are a closer reflection of society at large. And so, despite its stained history, we must become agents of change to aid Black males in their studies and to be academics in higher education. I took an anti-deficit approach. What does that mean? It means that I reject at-risk research. It means that I refer to our students as minoritized, marginalized, and oppressed. I think that it is important to guard our Black males from self-fulfilling prophecy. The terminology that is often used of lazy, incapable, is unacceptable. We have to illuminate Black male achievement and replicate the success of the 34% that are getting to degree attainment. So we're going to take an anti-deficit approach today, which means that we have to look at the institution. We have to look at what we are cultivating and how we're going about that cultivation. My research was built upon the ideas and thoughts of alumni. That is significant to me because they were able to reflect on their higher education experiences. Each of the alumni members of this study had to complete at least 4 years of college education, meaning that they earned their bachelor's degree. Now, what's important is that they went from degree seeking to degree attained. Another reason why I got involved in this research is because Black males have the credentials to meet the requirements of admissions in many institutions, which is very rigorous, but they're not getting out on the other end. And how are we going to address those issues? Today, we're going to look at the professional narratives as these alumni members have now entered into their careers, and we're going to evaluate some of those similarities. And we also know that this is an underrepresented population that can really aid us in filling the gap and bringing Black males to success. The research objectives for this presentation are to understand how Black male alumni describe their higher education experiences, 2, to identify the positive and negative factors that aided in their decisions to persist to degree attainment, and 3rd, to understand how these Black males navigated the gauntlet of race and racism at predominantly white institutions. I took a phenomenological approach to this research, meaning that I took the individual experiences of these Black male participants and came up with a collective narrative for their experiences. An individual's experience to be a phenomenological, to take a phenomenological approach must be a firsthand experience. And all of these Black males had firsthand experiences at their institutions. And the institution types were very important as well, as I had participants from private institutions, public institutions, liberal arts colleges. I captured 2-year institution experiences, and we're going to tell their stories. This is a qualitative research study. I wanted to dive into the narratives of these Black males. And qualitative research as a social scientist allows me to move from what is to what can be. And so we understand that the future and what can be for these Black males is much better than what we have been generating. I collected data in 2 forms. In the first form, I conducted interviews using Seidman's approach. In the first interview, I got to know my participants and their life history. Then we went into their higher education experiences. And after we went into their college or higher education experiences, we made meaning of those experiences. My second form of data collection was in the form of documents. I collected academic transcripts to validate and verify degree attainment. If I'm going to do research on alumni, I wanted to confirm who I was speaking to. And also in taking an anti-deficit approach, I want to understand the academic performance, the GPA, their volunteering, the distinctions and the honors that they hold. So let's get to talk about these alumni. They carried an average GPA of a 3.3. They had little to no gaps in their enrollment. They were strongly retained, strongly engaged. Some carried as much as 21 credit hour course loads. They are spectacular. Today, I carry the beauty and the burden of their narratives, and I will share them with you. The names and the images that you will see are pseudonyms, and I use images to represent the Black male as scholar. My research shows that in media, that the negative images of Black males really has a negative impact on their experiences in society. First, I would like to introduce you to Clinton. Clinton had a 3.7 GPA. He earned a 3.7 GPA. He was on the president's list, the dean's list, and he graduated summa cum laude. He was in the student government. He was a leader in Club Creole, and he is currently a certified public accountant. Clinton is still engaged with his institution, and he comes back to aid Black students in understanding the profession and what to expect in his field of audit and accounting. Clinton had some beautiful experiences at the institution, but he also had some negative experiences. He did not have a sense of belonging at the institution on all campuses. In fact, Clinton made note of the differences between the East and the West campus of his institution. While on the East campus, he noticed that they embraced the mission to diversity, but when he went to the West campus, he felt like a fish out of water. Oftentimes we have a university or a college mission statement or a DEI statement that is not universal and does not go across all campuses where the students are enrolled. I introduce you to Travis and the beauty and burden of his narratives. Travis earned a 3.6. He also graduated cum laude. He was engaged in the marching band, but he struggled with his identity in that band because of the marching style, the playing style. And in fact, he went to the leaders of the band and asked if they could play a more diverse musical selection. His request went unheard. He felt that band became like a job instead of the joy that he was used to. Unfortunately, he had to leave the band, but fortunately, he stayed at the institution, finding a sense of belonging amongst his frat brothers and Black men lead. He is currently an information technology consultant. I introduce you to Corey. Corey was a double major. He was on the dean's list, engaged in the NAACP, and also found a belonging in campus ministry. But Corey struggled also with a sense of belonging. And what was interesting about Corey's narrative is his PWI was within a 10-mile radius of an HBCU. Corey frequently went to that HBCU for his sense of belonging. And he stated for 4 years, he went to the homecoming at the HBCU and never went to one homecoming at his own home institution in his PWI. And he said the reasoning for that was he never felt that he could be totally himself at his home institution. But at HBCU, he had this feeling of pride about Blackness and who he was. I introduce you to the burden and the beauty of Arnold's narrative. Arnold graduated cum laude. He was engaged in the NAACP, and he was also a member of the Black Student Union. The burden of Arnold's narrative. When he went to class and sat with his fellow Black peers, he noticed whatever side of the room that they sat on, that the professor taught to the other side of the room. Now imagine that feeling of being uneducable and incapable. Bobby has a very interesting narrative and really solidifies the need to get into studying more with our alumni and bringing them in and getting them engaged in higher education to give back to our future Black male collegians. Bobby earned a 3.6. He was engaged as a tutor and in residence hall, but Bobby felt that he had poor experiences on higher education campuses and that he was living in a borrowed space. That experience continued into his career. He makes it a point to see his patients on a daily basis. However, he gets one complaint, and that complaint is they have not seen the doctor for the day. Bobby is still living in that borrowed space where he has to go back around to see his patients again to let them know that they have indeed had an experience with the doctor. These are all inhibitors that Black males feel, from the microaggressions to the culture clash. They also experience onlyness, where they feel the weight or the burden of being the only or one of a few Blacks in a particular course, and having the weight of having to speak for the entire race. And that weight becomes heavy. And they also experience what I would call racial battle fatigue. Racial battle fatigue is very real among Black male students. So we're going to take a look at some of the things that these Black males did to address these dilemmas. First, they had a strong sense of Blackness and identity. As I mentioned, I got a strong sense of Blackness and identity at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center as a child. Arnold shared a very beautiful narrative, as all the participants in this study had beautiful narratives about their sense of identity. Arnold was taught by his third grade teacher about race and the construct of race, the ever-changing construct of race. She took out a black crayon and a brown crayon, and she asked the class, "Which color are you?" Arnold thought, "This is easy, I'm brown." But then she had to teach him how the world viewed him as Black and what that Blackness meant. And Arnold says she taught us to love yourself, to love your skin. You're a beautiful Black boy or a beautiful Black girl. And I was like, cool, I am a beautiful Black boy. I can do this. That strong sense of identity gave Arnold a sense of pride, and it gave him the strength to endure his negative racial experiences. Black males in this study found a lot of support from family, and they also received financial support. I asked the participants of this study a very important interview question to understand their support. And that question was, if you could dedicate your degree or diploma to one individual, who would that individual be? All 8 of the participants would dedicate their degree or diploma to a Black woman. I found that to be amazing. Also found that to be true for myself as a 3rd-generation college student and a 2nd-generation doctor in my family. My mother, a Harvard graduate, was my inspiration in my degree program. There's a beautiful expression that I hope that I get right today. When you teach a man, you've taught an individual. When you teach a woman, you have taught a nation. These Black women, these mothers, aunts, and teachers were instrumental in the growth and development of our Black male scholars. And I find it important to say that is with the presence of their fathers. The second form of support was financial. Black males found scholarships and really navigated the financial aid process and had no financial dilemmas in my study. And it is important to understand and know that if we can onboard students and make sure that they understand their financial responsibilities, their experiences can be a lot more pleasant. These Black males also were involved in the library or took advantage of resources in the library. Seems like a simple solution, right? Just going to the library and connecting with friends. They used the writing lab. In essence, they did not take a soloist approach, but a chorus approach to their success. The findings of my research, there are 3 major findings. First, the experiences with racism and racist navigation. The second finding was that Black males seek and have a quest for a sense of belonging. And the third finding is the necessity of mentorship for persistence and degree attainment. All participants of this study had racist experiences at their predominantly white institutions. But it's important to note that higher education is fighting a K-12 dilemma. Racism begins early in the elementary school process for young Black boys. Arnold deposited in this research a narrative of witnessing a teacher assigning a white child to watch over a Black child. And what he said was very interesting. He said, I noticed the white boy bullied him more than anything else. And the white boy didn't get in trouble for bullying the Black boy. And then the Black boy was always in trouble. I feel like it really didn't matter what he did. He was usually in trouble just because he was Black. This form of surveillance that begins in elementary school continues. And we've seen this form of surveillance in its ugliest forms, and the likes of Trayvon Martin and Ahmaud Arbery. This must become unacceptable in our education settings. If this particular teacher had an issue with this young Black child in this course, she must be the professional and not send another child to bully this young man. These experiences and the system of racism continue into high school. Bobby also made note of a vice principal who would not allow him to register for honors courses. He was being held back from his ability to attain academic success. He was deemed incapable, and Bobby had to wait for a white female friend of his to register for 2 honors courses to go back and then register. These are the racist navigations. These are the experiences of Black males that have to, again, work twice as hard or go back to see an advisor on multiple occasions to get the experiences that they deserved on the first occasion. We also made note of inequitable resources. William made note that the baseball team and the football team did not get the same resources in terms of being successful. The baseball team got facilities, buses, and the Black students who were on the football team had to just get to the game to the best of their ability. We need to talk about equity in the K-12 setting, which I have deemed racism preparatory school. It's racism preparatory school because it prepares young Black men to experience their higher education experiences or encounters. In these higher education experiences, I found that administration has been unresponsive when Black males do go to report racist incidents. In one particular case, Corey shared that there was a white fraternity house that had cannons on its property, and they pointed those cannons to the Black Student Union in a warlike gesture. It was a very blatant, overt sign, the pointing and direction of these cannons. And when they went to report it to the administration, they said, well, the campus or the frat house is on private property, so there's nothing we can do. I want you to go to the chat as a higher education professional and leader and type what you think could have been done in that situation so we can discuss it at the end of this presentation. We also had experiences from Mike, who said that he had a white female colleague as a RA who only carded Black students. Again, this threat and this criminalization. But was more egregious was when he shared it with his supervisor. Again, nothing could be done. Criminalization continues for Black boys, and as early again as the K-12 setting. And LaRon had an experience with the police at age 14 in which he was handcuffed and placed on the side of the road. Luckily for LaRon, his elder brother was able to call his mother, who came to the scene and was a corrections officer and had to have them released. They never got a story as to why they were handcuffed or why they conducted a search in his older brother's vehicle. That situation prepared LaRon for his second experience with the police in higher education. He went to an off-campus party and police arrived with AK-47s to shut the venue down, according to LaRon. They used excessive force, and he watched one of his friends get assaulted and arrested by police officers. These situations are very real for Black males and impact their experiences, even in the neighboring cities of their higher education campuses. The cradle to prison pipeline is very real, and I view that higher education is the proper pipeline that must be taken for Black males. We have to pour in more resources to ensure that they do not end up being funneled into this pipeline. Due to mass incarceration, 1 out of 9 Black children have a parent who is incarcerated, in comparison to 1 out of 57 white children who have a parent that is incarcerated. These take resources out of households and have a profound impact on the social upward mobility of our children and Black men in higher education. As a result of the racist experiences, these Black males find a quest for a sense of belonging. That sense of belonging is typically met by the admissions team as they are prospective students. The admission teams grants access for students who are seeking to get into college, and they also have strong presentation skills where they set up a minority community for these students. Corey chose his institution because of the minorities or the students that he felt a close connection with on his campus visit. Likewise, Bobby, in his recruiting experience, was able to link up with other minority students. And he said that he enjoyed it. And he felt there was a sense of community. And they flew Bobby out on 2 occasions, and he chose Midwest University. Bobby is such an academic, he began writing to Midwest University in 9th grade. And he mentioned that their admissions team was the only team that took him seriously enough to write him back. After the admissions phase, these same 2 students noticed a shift in their higher education experience. The access that was once open for them, the setting of putting them with minority males for a campus visit soon changed. And they had very different narratives once registered and enrolled. Bobby shared that college was a majority white space, and he was just trying to figure out where he fit in that space. And he was overwhelmed. Many of the Black students in this study stated that they experienced homesickness and desire to go back home in their first year. So how can we have a stronger onboarding process that leads Black males not only into registration, but ensures that their experiences become improved? I too had my own experience with a sense of belonging. And my experience was unique in that I was doing well in a lecture for a science course, but when I got to the lab, I was struggling. And I was struggling because my experience in high school never gave me the opportunity to use a high-powered microscope. If I could just see to make my observation, I would be in great shape. But my inability or my disconnect with the microscope left me feeling out of place. And so I had to lean upon a white male peer in the course, and I struggled with my sense of belonging and feeling if I belonged in that course or if I had the skill set. But we have to make it clear and evident to our Black men that they do belong. I'll point to the sciences and this comical, if you will, story of these scientists who wanted to gauge how a frog jumps. And they told the frog to jump, and the frog jumped. And then they cut off the frog's legs and told the frog to jump, and the frog did not jump. And they made their assessment that a frog with no legs can't hear. We're making poor assessments of Black males and their experiences. They're not incapable. They just need opportunities. And so where there's not requisite, where Black males are not meeting the prerequisite information for a course, how can we bring them up to par quickly and swiftly and not deem them incapable? Based on these experiences of Black males, I coined the term environmental dualities. These are the polarizing environments on and off campuses where Black males experience a sense of belonging, connectedness versus the spaces where they experience marginalization. These forms of environmental dualities appeared, as I mentioned, with Corey, who went from his PWI to his HBCU to find that connection. That would be the sense of belonging that we seek and desire on all campuses for Black males. These dualities came in various forms. Black males had to visit the Black Student Union and have Sunday brunch. And Corey said that it was a place to go if you were African American on Coastal University's campus. It was a haven. It was a hub for Black students. William also had a similar experience in a Black fraternity where he had a camaraderie that he did not experience anywhere else on campus. Environmental dualities also took place in the curriculum, as 5 of the 8 Black males sought out courses that would give them a sense of belonging in the academic setting. So often, a sense of belonging is referred to this out of class or this experience that this social other that student affairs should handle. But what about the academic lens? Corey found a strong sense of identity as he began to study the lives of Langston Hughes, Ralph Emerson, Zora Neale Hurston, and he began to see his culture from a different perspective. He said that course changed his perspective of himself and his identity. That is the goal and objective of higher education, to cultivate the minds of the students. The curriculum is lacking in being inclusive of cultural content, and it is necessary to see how we can incorporate a stronger curriculum that is inclusive of content for Black students. Environmental dualities existed in on and off campus experiences. Many Black students noticed that the experiences with campus police were much better than the experiences with city police. And those experiences were very detrimental to the university's experiences. So how can we have a collaboration amongst police to have a greater understanding of how to see and treat Black males? There's a necessity of mentorship for persistence and degree attainment. The environmental dualities cause Black males to find peer-to-peer mentorships. William made a very strong statement in saying, I tell people all the time, my diploma should say, this diploma is awarded to William and friends because I definitely didn't do it alone. Having peers helps you go through the college experience. Clinton also had an experience where Gregory took him and take from a shy student to the leadership position, and he saw the potential in Clinton. Peers are outperforming professionals in accordance to my research. 7 of the 8 Black males were able to find peer mentorships, but only 4 of those Black males found professional mentorships. Corey had 2 very opposing experiences when he sought mentorship. He went to a student services representative who was a Black male, and he said, I want to be like you, teach me everything. From that day forward, he taught Corey how to tie a tie, to write a resume, and taught him how to be successful academically. He changed Corey's life. When Corey went to a faculty member to, in essence, ask the same question, he asked that faculty member, how can I get a doctorate degree? What does it take to become a doctor? And that faculty member told him it takes a lot of studying and a lot of hard work. You have to kind of be a nerd. That is something that would not really fit for people like you. You have to have a real desire to read, and that's probably something you wouldn't be interested in. Corey left that office, and that faculty advisor did not know that he motivated Corey more than ever. I'm proud to say that Corey will receive his doctoral degree this year. Black males are often told that they have delusions of grandeur when they're seeking success. This is why we must take an anti-deficit approach to aiding them in their scholarship and their research. This is the call to action. What are we going to do? I intentionally have receipts here because we have to show what we're going to do as a higher education institution that goes beyond the writing of a mission statement. I recommend that we begin to start collaboration with strategic thinking within our organizations. I recommend that we begin to create research centers to continue scholarships, Black male scholarship, and research. I hope that these pseudonyms came to life today. Higher education institutions have to become very real about the experiences of the Black males on their campus. We have to fortify relationships with our K-12 stakeholders. We need to hire diverse faculty. These are the receipts. We need to collaborate with campus police and city police and welcome them to our campuses. How can we maximize alumni and development resources? Meaning, how can we get human resource and financial resources for Black males on campus? We need to identify and empower institution ambassadors that will take action and ensure that the climate is not unresponsive when Black males seek their leadership. And finally, I recommend that we create a sustainable model for a minority male initiative on all campuses. I know sometimes I'm preaching to the choir because Broward College does so many of these things. My institution at Florida Atlantic University also does so many of these things, but we must ponder, how can we do it better? I believe that we need to have an environmental dualities checklist. How can we perform an audit of the spaces and the climate of our institutions? We can create faculty mentorships to ensure that Black males make academic connections. I know that faculty members are very busy, that they are facing the rigor of teaching coursework and research. But there is a glaring gap as the Black males in this study were not able to generate faculty mentorships. How can we measure advising and make sure that it is effective when a student goes to a professor to ask about accomplishments? How are they walking out with delusions of grandeur? Important for us to do is to fund minority male initiatives. For so many of the male initiatives, it is really a labor of love. We get someone from this department, a faculty member from that department, but where's the funding for these initiatives? How can we provide more scholarships for students? How can we pour more into the program to ensure that these experiences are real and wonderful for these students? We have to reimagine curriculum. I think that we can make space for joint faculty assignments where we get different perspectives for the same course. How do we look at the syllabus? And do we see DEI in the syllabi at our institution? There's room for attrition and retention data investigation. Are we looking at the data? When a student departs, are we looking to see if they are struggling academically? Does that speak to other things and other experiences that are being unaddressed? And we need to actually have a review board and a committee that really looks into the Black male experiences and holds everyone accountable. Here's my final narrative and the beauty and burden of being a Black male. Shortly after the murder of George Floyd, I had a false alarm that went off at my home, and the alarm company called me. I gave them the code, and I told them that all was well. Later in the evening, I hear a knock at my door, and I knew from the knock that the police had been dispatched. I went to grab my driver's license to ensure that they could see that the address and the door in which they knocked on match the address on my driver's license. And when I went to open the door, I still carry that feeling of the undergraduate student who walked into class on crutches and wondered how I would be viewed in that moment. In my own home, would I be criminalized? And would I be viewed as the perpetrator that they were indeed looking for? although there was no crime. These are the experiences of Black males that go from higher education into society. We are fighting a social justice matter that is very important. And I welcome you again and invite you to the table to aid in making sure that Black males have equitable experiences in higher education. I want to thank all the participants who were instrumental in ensuring that this particular presentation took place, and I'm happy that it manifested itself. I have to thank Kristen and Tiffany. Dr. Shireen was instrumental. Roberto Santiago was instrumental in marketing, and Valerie Joseph has been my right hand for years in aiding me and making sure that I'm capable of doing this work. At this time, I would like to see if we can open up the Zoom for questions and answers as it relates to this presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. And as Dr. Davis just mentioned, if you do have any questions or if you do feel inclined to come on the mic, you are more than welcome to speak up, or you can ask your questions in the chat. We do want to make sure that this is a space for inclusion and engagement as well. So, you know, please feel free to bring up any points that were very poignant to you, or any ways in which you feel that you would need more clarity on what Dr. Davis was just explaining.
I have a question, Dr. Davis. As far as inhibitors, I saw curriculum clash. Can you define that in a little bit more detail? I'm a little confused on that.
Sure. Curriculum clash is a term that I'm using in the same way of cultural clash. There's a clash with the curriculum. So here's an example. A young man shared with me that he goes into an an American literature course, and they're reading poetry. And the professor is speaking about the beauty of this poetry. But the content in that poetry was about the good old days of being able to own slaves and the joy that it brought this particular author. That is an example of a clash in culture for curriculum, for Black males, that we don't want to set aside the content of that poem and look and to see the beauty of it. It is not beautiful to us. It is not aiding us. It is not advancing our scholarship. So there's a clash in that curriculum. It is a clash in which we are not benefiting. It is something that will lead to attrition for these Black males.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Davis. This is Daryl. I'm an academic advisor at Brad College. I was curious and wondering of the story about the pointed cannons, if there was any resolution that happened to that campus or that college. You know, if there was a decision to remove those cannons or.
Well, from the input of the student, nothing was done about the cannons. But what they did was, as we talk about racial navigation, they went into a mode of finding leadership positions on campus to see how they can take care of the matter themselves. They reached out to outside sources to see how they can get those cannons removed. But I believe there was no real action that aided them in removing those cannons, and perhaps they may have pointed them in a different direction, but there was no response by the university.
And Kristen posted a follow-up question here. Or actually, I think I can wait and ask that one later in case we get some interesting responses there. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and leave a little bit more space for any follow-up questions that you all may have.
Good afternoon. This is Sheila Fabius. Thank you so much for the presentation. I thought it was very interesting. I wanted to know, what are the top 3 things that you want? Because I'm an AD for academic advising. And what are the 3 things you want an advisor to know when they see a Black male coming into their office that are facing challenges?
I want them to know the experiences that they come with, which is one of the things, reasons why I mentioned the K-12 experience, to understand some of the dilemmas or the lack of engagement they got there, the lack of advising that they got there. So what we want to do is pour in everything that we can and understand what they bring to the table. That would be the first thing. I would also like them to take their time in making sure they felt the sense of belonging, felt comfortable in speaking with them, understand their academic ambitions and what they desire and how they're going to aid them and elevate them in accomplishing those desires. There's been a disconnect somewhat in even seeking advisors, which instead of maybe having an approach of, well, we have office hours, how are we going to be active and engaging in going to get those students to ensure that they're getting the advising and having the ability to be advised. That will be essential. And one of the other factors with advising is just to make sure that the student is aware of all of his academic possibilities. So often I have students that will come to the office of the registrar who simply need to apply a forgiveness, and no one looked at their academic transcripts to let them know, after leaving an advisor's office, to let them know that they don't have to be in academic probation, or they don't have to be suspended. A forgiveness. So it would seem that we just need to make sure that we're pouring time and attention in looking at their academic audits, if you will, which would be very important and essential to their growth and development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis, I have a question for you myself.
Yes.
I was looking back at the notes I took on your recommendations, and I saw the one that stood out to me was, creating a research center for Black male scholarship. As you know, Kristen and I are researchers. We're very passionate about libraries, library resources, and access to information and resources. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit more about that, obviously, because Kristen and I would be deeply, and other librarians who are on this this meeting would be deeply interested in how the libraries can support the or even play a role in the creation of a research center for Black male scholarship at our institutions.
Absolutely. When I refer to Black male research in this particular case, I wanted to make sure that we're being institutions that generate more research, generate more articles, generate more books as it relates to Black male experiences, and having those students come in to tell their stories, and also helping them from a standpoint of understanding that whatever pathway or whatever college they select, that there's resources available to go about finding the necessary content or topic information. So the research center for me was to be a place for them to have an exchange of ideas and to begin to write and read literature as it relates to their own experiences.
Thank you so much. I do think that in terms of the role of the library, I know for a fact right now we do help and collaborate between various departments to hold research symposiums. And I think it would be a great idea to potentially have one that is themed on the lived experiences of our Black male students or even our minoritized students, in which they can research and validate the observations and their experiences in higher education institutions. I think it would open up a lot of doors for students to see themselves in the research and to kind of validate their own experiences. So thank you for that inspiration. I'm very invigorated. And I do see your hand up.
Okay.
Yes, good morning, Dr. Davis. It was a wonderful presentation. And I do have a question. I am a law enforcement officer on the FAU campus. My question is, what suggestions would you have for the campus police when encountering all males in general to seek help as far as mentorships, as far as certain directions? Because we encounter a lot of males, and a lot of times it could be between the midnight hours, and it's easy to see that they do need mentorship. They do need that person to give them that extra pat on the back to continue to move forward and be successful with the college experience. So is there anything specifically you may have to offer that I could share with the police department that we can continue to help with the male students on campus?
Well, for the police, there in the experiences of Black males in this particular study, there's a strong disconnect. I think one of the things that needs to happen is first and foremost is some form of truth and reconciliation, right? So just going to Black males at this point to say that we're going to mentor you is one thing. That is seeking to establish a stronger relationship. But where's the truth? Where's the truth in some of the videos that we have seen where police departments are going to stand up and say, hey, this particular arrest used excessive force. This particular murder actually did happen. It is not an accident, or it is not a proper use of technique. So first and foremost, there needs to be some form of truth. And then we can have the reconciliation. Then we can have the mentorships. As I mentioned, I think that the campus police experiences based on the Black males in my study were a lot more pleasant, if you will, than their experience with police off campus. And one of the things that happened on campus with a police officer was a student was pulled over, and he was a fraternity member, and he had his cane. He was a frat brother, and the officer was asking what were his intentions and how he intended to use that cane. And so there's this criminalization of what are we doing? Or we're always up to something. And so we just need to have more discussions to answer your question. And we can have mentorships. We can invite Black males to have forums on campus or workshops on campus. I believe Broward College is a beautiful place to do that because we do have a police training and facility that is very near on campus. So how can we utilize that resource? We see multiple cities that come on that campus, and how can we make those connections and ensure that those mentorships exist? But the mentorships, I believe, would be welcomed. But again, there would need to be some form of truth and reconciliation before that were to take place.
Go ahead, Fola. I see your hand up.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Well, how are you today?
Thank you, sir. I'm well. So I am from Nigeria, and I have a son who I brought here as a kid. So he's Nigerian, of course. So it's a medical school. So my question is, in your study that you did you interview any Black male from medical school? What is their experience, if you did? And if you didn't, what do you think about that?
Well, first, yes, I did interview one of the participants was a doctor, but it was not the intent to capture necessarily the medical school experiences. The intent was more to focus on the undergraduate experiences. So I did not dive deeper into his medical school experiences. But what I can say is that based on the little that I was able to gather from his graduate school experiences, it was more of the same. It was very competitive. At times he felt that he was on the outskirts of the ability to study, formulate study groups with some of his peers. And so there were some close connections to what that undergraduate experience was. Additionally, I shared an experience of which he still is living in a borrowed space, even as a doctor and as a professional, where he again is not acknowledged or becomes invisible in his profession.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. I also want to make note that it's important to note that as you talk about your son being Nigerian, I interviewed multiple ethnicities, and many Black males, although they are Black and we exist within this social construct, strongly identify with their identities, as your son should say he is Nigerian. I had Black males who do identify as Haitian or Jamaican, but still fall under this spectrum or this race and this social construct of Blackness. And again, it's very important to make sure that we're inclusive in understanding of all of their experiences. And I think there's some work to be done with making some more connections with the various ethnicities within Black race and Black culture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis, thank you for your presentation today. This is David Bynes from Florida Atlantic University. I wanted to jump in there in terms of the Black diaspora piece. As you know, we launched the Office of Black Student Success and Initiatives with a soft launch in the spring and a hard launch this fall. And one of the dynamics that I've noticed throughout the higher ed experience and within the academy would be this idea of anti-Blackness. Michael Dumas talks a lot about this idea of surveilling of Black men and the anti-Blackness that Black boys often experience even on up through their years in higher education. My question for you is, in your research, did you uncover any of those beyond this idea of racism, but did you uncover this idea of anti-Blackness, particularly in terms of hearing some of your recommendations? And if you did uncover that idea of anti-Blackness, how do you think that will, or what impact, I should ask, will that have in terms of being able to see those recommendations actually implemented within the academy?
Absolutely. We took a look at anti-Blackness and a lot of the curriculum and the content. When I look at the transcripts and I spoke of the desire to have courses that had focus on more of a Blackness as the central theme of the course, the students were very excited about those courses. And it should not be placed off as this distant other or this elective. Why isn't it in the heart of the curriculum? Why does it have to be even marginalized, if you will, in the course catalog? And so we see this form of anti-Blackness. I made note of it in the experiences of, I believe, Travis, who made note of he and his Black peers sitting on one side of the classroom and the teachers teaching to the other side of that classroom, not bringing them the same treatment of being able to grasp the educational content there. And so we see this, and it is unfortunate, and the Academy has much work to do. There must be committees that must be formed to really take action and show some change, right? As I call for receipts, what are the changes in the syllabi? Where are they? Where are the changes in the course catalog year after year, we should be able to point to those and say, if we're going to, discuss being a DEI institution and proud of our work in social justice, we should be able to point to the tangible elements that exist that reflect that we're not practicing anti-Blackness. We understand Blackness as the ultimate other, right? And so even when you look at Blackness as from a diaspora lens, the descendants of Ham, from a spiritual standpoint, that Black people are the descendants of Ham and that we're not equal, even spiritually, or we don't have the same soul of our counterparts. And we know that these, in a lot of ways, are still being, these concepts are still being taught in higher education. And we have work to do to see to it that they're not in our curriculum.
And I do like the point that David brought up further in the chat here, which is that there are many institutions who are, selective and active in fighting against Black studies being a part of the curriculum. And as noted as well, Dr. Davis, I liked your point that Black studies should not be necessarily considered the elective, the optional. As someone who has gone to a PWI, I did make note of that as well, that my first interaction with African-American literature or any Black studies was as an elective option, not as, a part of my core curriculum. And so it almost puts the onus on the student to seek out and be curious about that, rather than acknowledging it as an integral part of American literature, American history, American sociology, psychology. All of it has, touched upon and been touched by African Americans. And so it's very interesting to, have it brought about as an elective option versus, the status quo.
I agree with you wholeheartedly there, Tiffany. And again, we need receipts.
I agree. And so if anyone else has no questions, I think we want to do a closing question, which I believe Kristen was nice enough to post in the chat. So, Kristen, you can either pull it up on the screen or I can say it here, but just to kind of close, we want everyone to consider your role within your organization, where you are right now. How do you think you can implement what you have learned today? Not necessarily everything, but what are some first steps that we can see in this chat that people are interested in taking to implement what we've learned today within the power and the role that you play at your organization? Okay, I see David has kicked off the chat here. David mentioned, after continuous critical conversation, FAU is preparing to launch a certificate in Black African American Studies.
Thank you for those receipts, David. We have to continue to do the good work, and it is essential that these studies are continued and shared. And one thing I want to mention about this work in social justice and DEI is that we have to be mindful and also careful of participating in Oppression Olympics. And when I talk about Oppression Olympics, that is this continual battle amongst oppressed groups to fight for resources and fight one another for who's going to be at the forefront. That is not the way that we're going to make progress in DEI initiatives. So how can we collaborate and make sure that we're working together on these campuses? And how can we make sure that the conversations are being had and that the proper parties are coming forth to the table and we have transparency and inclusion to make the changes that are needed?
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. Brandon Bell mentioned that one step that they are looking forward to taking is reaching out to their peers on campus and having conversations about our experiences so far. So thank you, Brandon, for sharing that. I think it would be remiss if I didn't answer the question here as well. I have never participated in any mentoring. I have been mentored before. So Dr. Davis, your statement of, reaching out to people who have doctorate degrees and having the opportunity to be mentored by Black people, a Black woman in particular who had her doctorate degree and kind of walked me through the process and how to attain that. I've never thought about myself as being empowered to mentor. And so after this presentation, I do feel a lot more empowered to seek out mentorship opportunities, particularly with the Black male students at our institution, and provide myself as a resource academically, but also professionally for any questions that they would have about navigating institutions of higher education. So thank you for that idea. I know we do have a minority male initiative at Broward College, and so I think this would be a great opportunity to shout them out and maybe encourage people to seek out mentorship opportunities within that scope to kind of provide, open doors for, our Black male students who might participate in that program. And I do see some movement in the chat here. Okay.
That's phenomenal, Tiffany. And I encourage you and applaud you for taking that mentorship assignment to another level and taking it to heart.
Thank you for inspiring me. David mentions, I will continue to ask the hard questions and place pressure from my role so that we move from rhetoric to action as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ed mentions, as a police department, we will continue to be transparent with the FAU community and make community policing a priority. And Shireen, thank you for participating. Shireen mentions, start by recommending professional development seminars to my fellow faculty and staff members, particularly hiring managers, seminars that focus specifically on intraracial relationships, racial awareness and acceptance. So I'm assuming something like this, Shireen. One distinct way to address this issue is to bring in professionals to train faculty and staff on these issues. Evaluations from professional development opportunities should be shared with hiring officials. So thank you so much for sharing, Shireen. Eric mentions, I do my best to pour into my fraternity brothers on both FIU and FAU campuses, not just to provide them information, but helping them make decisions that they're dealing with. And thank you for mentioning that, Eric. I belong to Zeta Phi Beta sorority. And so I do want to advocate for the role that historically Black fraternities and sororities has played in providing mentorship opportunities. And I know for a fact that at Broward College, we have done some programming to introduce students to historically Black fraternities and sororities that are here in the South Florida area. And so I do think that would be a great idea as well, to help students understand that there are organizations available that are connected to your collegiate experience that can enhance and provide mentorship.
I think it's important, as you mentioned, that we provide mentorships. It's also important for initiatives and minority male initiatives to go and begin to do their own mentorships, meaning that there's a need for them to go back all the way to the elementary schools in their neighboring communities. So the Black boys who have been under surveillance can see them as college students and witness the future. And as they go back and they become the pillars in their community, they will understand who they are and what they mean. They will understand their own significance and continue to pursue their degrees and remain involved in colleges and universities. So there's great work to do with the mentorship, but I want to mention that the minority male initiatives have the ability to also make change and impact in their communities.
Okay.
I want to ask the group if anyone who's a leader in higher ed, how they would have dealt with the fraternity that pointed the cannons at the Black Student Union. What do you think could have been done as professionals or anyone who may be experts in conduct or the legal aspects of higher education?
I see Tatiana's hand up. Go ahead, Tatiana.
My background is res life. So reading that, I was very surprised that the college did not address that. There, regardless of the status of it being on or off campus, if it's a registered student organization, they could have addressed that issue. That was really surprising that that was left as is and not addressed immediately, because that addresses the campus climate. It's not about who lives in a house or that's just, I don't understand how that was acceptable. That would have never been something we would have let slide on any of the campuses that I worked on. And I purposely got into housing because I went to a PWI, and the programming on campus did not resonate with me or my the other Black women on campus. So that's very disappointing to even know that such a situation was allowed and leadership did not handle it. But I think out of those type of situations, you do get those students of color that end up coming into leadership roles. I purposely made sure to always be my authentic self, my natural hair, so that other students of color see that representation in different roles and know that we are able to get there and open to those conversations, those awkward conversations, walking up to students and engaging them, just being a face, looking them directly in the eye and saying, hello, how are you? And letting them know that they are seen. This presentation was phenomenal. Thank you. God, I'm intentional with my work with my students. I recently was on a call with a young man. The way he articulated himself got me so excited. And I told him, I said, I feel like I'm talking to a future CEO or president. And he was just like, oh my gosh, thank you. And we just, the way I was able to pour into him and hear it immediately, I told him, like, I want you to check in with me monthly, even if it's just the email, because I want to make sure you're doing what you need to do to be successful. And he was very receptive of that. And we were on a Zoom call, so we weren't face to face. It was just him being able to hear that I told him that he was capable of it. So we have a lot of work to do, but we can do it. Thank you so much. I'm rambling because I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I was taking it all in. I'm really appreciative to know that we have people like you, these types of stories, and knowing that there are more who are doing the service is really healing, to carry these narratives and for me to deal with my own racial battle fatigue or my wounded leadership, if you will. It becomes difficult. So we need to have platforms like this. And this is why I applaud the library for bringing these types of presentations forward, so we can hear one another and know that we have individuals that are combating and refuting the negative experiences that Black males and other minoritized groups are having and encountering on a daily basis in higher education. So I want to say thank you very much. And I want you to know that my research showed that Black men feel love. They feel love. I'm compelled to let you know that even DMX said that everyone wants to be somebody's baby. And that love is felt. And for those that are pouring out love and humanity and to these Black men, I applaud you and I ask that you continue to persevere.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. We cannot thank you enough for this opportunity to host you, for this opportunity to learn from you, and for this opportunity to engage with you. Kristen is actually, I'm going to go in the chat. Dr. Davis, I know you shared your email on the slide, in that last slide, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat as well. Or if you'd like to, you can put it up on the screen again, because I want to make sure people know how to contact you in case they do have further questions and want to continue this conversation beyond this space. It's been an honor, truly an honor and a privilege.
I want to say thank you again to everyone who came and attended to ensure that it was known that this topic is essential, that this topic is important. And that really motivates me to continue to do this work. And I invite you to email me. I've included that in the chat because I would love to have opportunities to collaborate and see where and how we can help young Black men. You may have a young Black male that you would like to introduce me to. I would love to meet them. I would love to start engagement in creating more equitable spaces in colleges and universities. As the world is turning to Zoom, they don't have to even attend the same university, but they can have a space where they can express, where they can understand that we are a chorus or a choir that is prepared to move forward and to continue their degree attainment. I'm motivated myself, and I've set a goal for myself to aid and assist 20 Black males in attaining their doctoral degree. And we need to set goals for ourselves and saying, what is going to be next? I am not enough. I am not going to be an isolated incident. I will not be viewed as someone who is the exception to the rule. Excellence is the standard, and I will continue to take an anti-deficit approach in helping all Black male scholars who wish to strive to be greater.
Okay, so thank you so much once again, Dr. Davis. I'm grinning from ear to ear because I am very impressed, and I loved the engagement from our audience, and I just loved everything that I learned, and the fact that I came away inspired and empowered to make a difference. And so I'd like to thank everyone for attending this presentation. Please be sure to reach out to us if you do have any follow-up questions. Dr. Davis's email is in the chat there. I'm going to go ahead and put it in there one more time for everyone saying goodbye, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And then I will also include the email address for Kristen and I, if anyone would need to reach out to us with any follow-up questions. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.